Soft hum, dust motes dancing.
Nkechi sat alone in a dimly lit room, her fingers tapping rhythmically against the rough wooden table. The only light came from a flickering oil lamp, casting long shadows on the walls. Her heart pounded steadily, her mind consumed by the plan she had nurtured for years. She clenched her fists, her nails digging into her palms as she muttered to herself, her voice barely above a whisper. "It is time to revenge. Now that the king is looking for a cook, I will get my chance." A slow, sinister smile crept onto her lips. Her dark eyes gleamed with a mixture of pain and resolve. She exhaled deeply, recalling the past, the betrayal, the humiliation, the loss. Every moment had led her to this point. She would walk into the palace not as a May cook, but as the instrument of justice. This time, she would not fail. The following day, Nkechi arrived at the palace for the interview. The grand hall loomed before her, its golden chandeliers casting a dazzling glow over the polished marble floors. Tall pillars lined the room, their carvings whispering of ancient power and prestige. A stern-faced woman, dressed in fine embroidered robes, sat across from her, scrutinizing her with sharp, calculating eyes. "You wish to be the palace cook?" the woman asked, her voice cool and authoritative. Nkechi swallowed her nerves and met the woman's gaze. "Yes, my lady," she replied confidently. This was her chance, and she wouldn't fail. "I have years of experience. You won't be disappointed," Nkechi added. The interviewer handed her a set of ingredients. "Prepare a dish. If it is good, you may have a chance." Nkechi worked swiftly, her hands moving with practiced ease as she chopped, stirred, and seasoned with precision. The scent of sizzling spices and simmering broth soon filled the air, wrapping the kitchen in an irresistible aroma. The interviewer, drawn by the enticing smell, stepped closer, her eyes narrowing with curiosity. Taking a spoonful, she tasted the dish, her expression unreadable at first. Silence stretched between them, thick with anticipation. Then, slowly, she nodded in approval. "Impressive," she admitted, setting the spoon down. "The king will be pleased." Nkechi lowered her head slightly, but inside, her heart pulsed with satisfaction. Moments later, the chief steward approached her. "You are to start work immediately. Report to the kitchen tomorrow at dawn." Nkechi bowed slightly, hiding the gleam of triumph in her eyes. The first step of her plan was complete. Now, she just had to wait for the perfect moment to strike. The grand palace of Umuaka was known for many things. Its towering walls that seemed to touch the sky, the golden throne room that shimmered under the glow of oil lamps, and the powerful king who ruled with an iron fist. But above all, it was known for its feasts. Every evening, the air was thick with the scent of roasting meats, sizzling spices, and freshly pounded yam. And behind these lavish meals was one woman, Nkechi, the palace cook. Her food was nothing short of magic. The rich aroma of her pepper soup drifted through the corridors, drawing even the busiest courtiers toward the dining hall. Her jollof rice, perfectly spiced and deep red like the evening sun, was the envy of all other chefs. Each dish she prepared carried a depth of flavor that no one could quite explain. The king himself had once declared that only Nkechi's hands could prepare his meals. He trusted her completely, knowing that her food was not only delicious but also comforting, a taste of something deeper, something that lingered in the mind long after the last bite. Her meals brought joy, satisfaction, and an odd sense of longing, the kind that kept people coming back for more. But Nkechi was quiet. She never spoke more than was necessary, never mingled with the other servants, and never allowed anyone to watch her prepare the final touches of the king's meals. She was an enigma, respected but distant. People whispered about her skill, marveled at her talents, but no one truly knew her. And in the shadows of the palace kitchen, she carried a secret that no one in the palace suspected. It started slowly. At first, the king merely complained of headaches, brushing them off as the burdens of leadership. Then came the dizziness, brief, fleeting at first, but soon strong enough to make him clutch the arms of his golden throne for balance. His ministers, his guards, and even the palace servants who dined on leftovers from his table began experiencing similar symptoms. Weakness spread like wildfire. One by one, the strongest men in Umuaka found themselves struggling to rise in the mornings, their limbs heavy, their vision blurred. Whispers filled the palace. Was it a curse? A spiritual attack? The village healers were summoned, mixing herbs and casting protective charms, but nothing eased the strange illness. The once mighty king, feared across the land, was now a frail shadow of himself. His most trusted advisors, the very men who dined with him daily, were wasting away before his eyes. Panic gripped the palace, but no one suspected the quiet woman who moved through the kitchen with practiced ease, the one whose hands had fed them all. Yet Nkechi remained untouched. She continued her work as if nothing had changed, preparing meals with the same care, the same dedication. The servants noticed how her eyes never held fear, only quiet observation. And that was when suspicions began to rise. The palace was in chaos. With the king bedridden, his cabinet members weakened, and fear gripping the village, a decision was made. An investigation must be carried out. Something was wrong in the palace, and they had to find the cause. The palace guards watched everyone closely. Food tasters were assigned to test every meal before it was served. The healers examined the sick, searching for signs of poison or witchcraft. The head of the royal guard interrogated every servant, questioning them about any unusual activity. And then came the question, who prepared the food? All fingers pointed to Nkechi. She stood in front of the royal council, her face calm, her hands folded before her. You have been the king's cook for years, the head guard said. And yet, you are the only one who remains well while the rest of the palace falls to sickness. What do you have to say for yourself? Nkechi met his gaze, unflinching. I have only done my duty. The suspicion in the room grew thicker. The council members exchanged glances. Something about her demeanor, her unwavering calmness, unnerved them. The head guard turned to the servants. Bring out her cooking supplies. Everything she uses to prepare the king's meals. We will examine them. For the first time, a flicker of something crossed Nkechi's face. Was it Faye? Or something else? The entire palace gathered as Nkechi's cooking pots, spices, and secret ingredients were brought forward. The healers and guards examined everything carefully, sniffing, tasting, and testing. They ran their fingers through her grains, checked the oils for any impurities, and even ground some dried leaves between their palms, searching for any sign of foul play. But everything appeared ordinary, until one of the guards, digging near the hearth, struck something hard beneath the kitchen floor. A hushed murmur rippled through the crowd as the guard carefully unearthed a small clay jar, its surface covered in dust. When the lid was removed, a foul, sickly-sweet smell filled the air, so potent that even the most seasoned healers recoiled. Some covered their noses, while others exchanged uneasy glances. Inside the jar was a dark, thick liquid, unlike anything they had ever seen. It clung to the sides of the vessel like tar, its surface swirling ominously. What is this? The head guard demanded, his voice sharp. The room fell into tense silence. All eyes turned to Nkechi. Her face remained expressionless, unreadable. The guards stepped closer, their hands on their weapons. Speak, one barked. What is this? Still, she said nothing. And then, at last, she spoke. I did it, she admitted, her voice steady and unshaken. I poisoned them all. Gasps filled the grand hall. Murmurs of disbelief rippled through the gathered crowd like an unsettling wave. The king, weak but barely conscious, managed to lift his head. His once proud face was drained of color, his eyes wide with shock and betrayal. But why? the head guard demanded, his voice hoarse with anger and confusion. What have we done to deserve this? Nkechi's lips curled into a bitter smile. You do not remember, do you? None of you do. A chilling silence settled over the room. The torches along the palace walls flickered, casting shadows that danced across the terrified faces of the onlookers. She stepped forward, her usually quiet presence now filled with an intensity no one had ever noticed before. Years ago, a young woman was cast out of this village. She was pregnant, abandoned, left to die in the wilderness like an animal. And do you know why? Her piercing gaze locked onto the king, her eyes burning with fury. Because of you. She was pregnant for you as a prince, but you denied her for being poor and cast her out of the village to hide the truth. The king's face contorted in confusion. His hands trembled as he tried to push himself upright. What nonsense is this? He croaked. Nkechi took another step closer, her voice now thick with quiet rage. That woman was my mother. She managed to put bed to me and lost her life in the process. The revelation struck like a thunderclap. Gasps filled the room, followed by hushed whispers that spread like ripples on water. Some of the elders paled, their faces drained of color, their hands gripping their robes as if the weight of forgotten sins had suddenly become too heavy to bear. The cabinet members exchanged uneasy glances, their memories stirring, their minds reaching back to a past they had long chosen to forget. Nkechi's voice did not waver. Her rage was controlled, but it simmered beneath the surface, sharp as a blade. She begged for mercy, she continued, her eyes locked onto the king. She pleaded for a chance to live, for a chance to raise me. But you, she pointed a trembling finger at the throne, at the elders, at the men who had once held power over her mother's fate. You turned your backs on her. You cast her away like she was nothing. A heavy silence fell over the palace hall. The weight of her words pressed down on everyone present. The king's hands trembled on the armrests of his golden throne. No one dared to move, to speak, to deny the truth that had been laid bare. And now, there was no turning back. Slowly, the pieces of the past fell into place. A young girl. A banished woman. A cruel decision made long ago. The king's voice trembled. Your mother? Yes, Nkechi whispered. She died because of you. Because of your greed. Because this council deemed her unworthy. Tears welled in her eyes, but she did not let them fall. She had nowhere to go. No one to turn to. She died bringing me into this world. In suffering. In agony. And I swore that one day, I would make you all feel the pain she felt. The silence was deafening. The king closed his eyes, as if trying to recall a past he had long buried. The council members bowed their heads, guilt washing over them like a wave. Nkechi took a deep breath. Now, you know why. The palace head guard commanded, arrest her. As one of the guards moved to seize her, the king, weak but resolute, raised a trembling hand. Leave her, he said, his voice laced with exhaustion. Let her go. The guards hesitated, glancing at one another. Nkechi stood motionless, her heart pounding. Then the king met her gaze, his expression unreadable. Leave, he repeated, this time softer but firm. Before I change my mind. For a moment, Nkechi held his stare, searching for any sign of regret. But there was none. With a deep breath, she turned away, her steps slow but steady. She did not look back. And just like that, Nkechi vanished from Umuaka, leaving behind only the lingering aroma of her unforgettable meals, and the haunting memory of a revenge long in the making, one that had shaken the very foundation of the palace.
Like and subscribe.